Hi, folks, and welcome to Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone, and I'm being. Well, first, I have to say, I am recovering from a cold. One of the things about this cold is that occasionally I have grievous coughing fits, which result from a postnasal drip.
Oh, they're annoying.
So I'd like to ask you to bear with me when I get into one of these coughing fits. I will try to go mute. Fortunately,
if you want us to go and take over, that it's all good, Joe. It gets you have your fit. I hate that feeling in the back of your throat. You just can't stop. Mm-hmm. So if you want to give it a few minutes here, no problem. But I'm Matt. You guys saw me last week on the, and you know, Brandy and Dee, you guys have been here far more often than I have.
Oh, no. Yeah, but I think everybody knows who you are, Matt, and we're all glad you're here.
I appreciate the time, and I like talking because I don't have a whole lot of people to talk about these things. Yeah. I know that we were supposed to talk about the Ukraine after Russia, you know, as far as democracy goes. And I don't know about you, but I saw Blinken come on recently and looked scared that China was going to come up with a solution, a peace solution that was going to be hard for the West to deny or say no to. And I don't know if you guys want to do this or not, but it's all based on the China's release of the 12 points proposal. And I think that's what's going to end up happening despite what the West. I do think that they're going to have to wipe out more, unfortunately, of Ukraine's army before that occurs. But that's what I think they're going towards, because they do not think that Russia wants to have a decisive kill win, because I think that's more dangerous for setting up a World War III scenario than it is to have an eventual demarcation line similar to North or South Korea, with a constant military DMZ zone that allows for the U.S. and Ukraine to not feel that they were completely lost and can go back to their constituents and say, well, we fought off the big bad Russians, and continue to, but give that 100-mile buffer zone in the Donbass for Russia. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, I saw Secretary Blinken, and I also saw Biden's response, and it was just gross. Mm-hmm. The ceasefire, no, that's just so they could go back and build up their military more. And it's like, they're trying to work out peace, and you're saying absolutely no to a ceasefire.
Yep.
But do you have the document with the 12-point?
I do. We can talk about that. It's pretty pretty straightforward. The first one is just saying, respecting the sovereignty of all countries.
Yeah.
That's the first point. And somebody may say, well, Russia didn't do that to begin with when they invaded Ukraine, right? But then, of course, you'll get the whataboutism call, which, when you talk about the, 74 different, at least known coup takeovers of the United States, and really you could technically call U.S. bases around the world occupied states.
Yeah, and plus add in the 2014 Maidan coup
Yep.
that the U.S. was involved in Ukraine.
Yep.
Yeah, which then in turn led to all the shelling, of the Donbass people, and also the oppression of the Russian minority, in Ukraine, and all the incidents over the 9 years, the 14,000 deaths, from the shelling. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they just found footage from CNN walking in during one of the shelling in the Donbass from 2014, and where 2,500 deaths in 1 week. And they actually were covering it before this occurred.
That's one thing that me and Dee have brought up on our show. We did a Saturday night where that was all we covered. And I went through and was pulling up old articles from before 2020 even about the Nazis in Ukraine, and even found some from a university and mainstream media and everything.
Yeah, when you learn how to use Google and put in date parameters, it's harder for them to, you'll still cover stuff up. Yeah, because that's how you do it, right? If anybody's wondering, well, you can go to, DuckDuckGo or all these other ones, but they aren't going to get you any better results. And Google actually has a way of getting rid of their algorithm so that you get the information that you're looking for. It's in the tools.
And I also even found articles from The Hill talking about back then.
Oh, The Guardian was all over it. Oh my God, they were calling Ukraine a Nazi, regime. I mean, they were completely blatant.
Yeah.
Sorry to use that word, but so yeah, I don't. It's impossible for them to hide that. But that was the first point in Chinese plan, is that from, once these borders are set, you are now looking at a sovereign country, not it may be a DMZ, but it's now they choose. And since they've already had the referendum, they will be part of Russia, and that's how I see this ending up to probably the Dnieper, because that's the best border line that they'll take, and they'll carve out 25 miles probably perimeter around Kiev. I don't believe that they're going to cut Kiev in half. I think it's going to be Dnipropetrovsk, and south along the river line. But I do think that Kharkiv will. I think Sumy is probably going to be where the line goes through, and everything backs that. But I do believe that they're going to have to continually create these cauldrons and invite them in, similar to the Kursk battle in World War II, really, where they just line up their defenses and wait for Ukraine, who can't seem to stop. The Bakhmut is just the latest example of that. Same thing happened in Lysychansk. Same things happened in Mariupol. They have that dire sense that they need to attack and take back everything, and they can't mitigate that in their political process. And I think that has to do with the West not allowing them to have any forethought of retreating. and sacrificing without being completely ousted of the area, unlike Russia, who can use it as a strategy.
But what of the 300,000 troops the Russians still have to commit?
Yeah, I think that a half are probably more like territorial troops, where they're going to go in to maintain the peace.
Oh, no, I wasn't raising it from that standpoint.
I'm sorry.
From the standpoint of the Bakhmut battle right now.
Oh, yes. Oh, the ones that are there.
You have a situation where that is coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Ukraine is still insisting there's going to be a counterattack. The 300,000 troops, are uncommitted thus far, but it's going to be very tempting to commit them to the counterattack, and it will be 300,000 troops versus something like 20,000 troops.
Yeah.
Those are probably the last good troops that Ukraine has left.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what's to stop the 300,000?
Yeah.
From going wherever they would like to go at that point.
Yeah. My personal and listening to Brian and Berletic and some of the Duran, maybe Dima a little bit.
Bill Scott Ritter also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Scott's a little. I like listening, but I kind of. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. I like Scott. I not mean anything bad. I think that the right now what they're doing is that they're pulling the Wagner troops are just in the Bakhmut city. Some of them have been pulled out in the perimeter. Regular Russian troops are taking over the outside perimeter and the northern territory and the southern and Ivaniska and then north and going towards Konstantinovka. I'm sorry, I'm very bad with these names. But those fronts are being manned by Russians waiting for that Ukraine offensive to come back to try and get Bakhmut freed up, just in case they come. And then I see that the Wagner troops that are inside are still pushing forward to grab the city center of Bakhmut. I don't know how fast they really want this to occur is what I'm getting at. I think that it's a slow draw, that they're trying to protect their troops and move very slowly, step by step in an intercity battle, just trying to push Ukraine to the point where they actually do commit their forces to Bakhmut to actually create an offensive, because that's actually a fatal move, and everybody knows it except for the Ukrainians. While at Vika down in the south, which was a much harder nut to crack, is collapsing, and what that does is it slows their offensive from Zaporizhia, because now you've got a whole end of that side. If that falls and they don't have their flank covered for a Ukraine offensive coming south towards Melitopol. Sorry, again, I'm terrible. And that makes it very hard to do that without more troops than they have, and they know that. And I think they're actually going to send the Wagner troops after the beginning of the Ukraine's offensive towards it. I think they're actually going to pull them out and send them south to Advika to finish off that area, because that'll be the signal for them to do their last dash to try and cut off the land bridge with Crimea. I think they're going to do them both at the same. Ukraine is going to do them both at the same time. I think that's the only hope they have, is by keeping as many of the regular troops in Bakhmut while they do an offensive there, and then attempt a mad dash to cut off Crimea.
But if that's the case, what do they do about the 300,000 troops?
The thing is it really matters on which border or which front the Ukraine has taken from. because they're not going to be able to do the whole entire thing. Dima doesn't believe that they're going to do anything. They're going to just wait for it to happen, and then just wait for them to come across in Zaporizhia and just wipe them out. I know that Brian Biletic talked about all these tanks, these old tanks coming in, and everybody's laughing at them, right? And then realize that those tanks have a farther distance they can hit targets with, and they have so much artillery that it's just pretty much bolstering every bit of their already overwhelming advantage in that region. So that to him looks like a northern attack, where they're going to come down and take everything up to the Severodonetsk River line as fast as they possibly can, once Ukraine commits to the whatever offensive they're going to do. It seems like if Ukraine doesn't do that, Russia's, I think, completely willing to stand by and just let them kill themselves in Bakhmut. I don't
grind it down, but then what happens? This what happens when they literally have very few troops and ammunition left.
Yeah, I think that the Russians are so disciplined that whatever is the directive politically will take over.
Yes.
I don't believe that if they actually did that, if that collapse happens, when that collapse happened, we will see it as anything more than another small defense collapsing and then moving closer and closer and closer to the Dnieper River. So that's my thought, is that they don't want to show a collapse. The Russians do not want to see, them running across the lines and killing. They want to see the slow increment that takes 6, 7, 8 a year.
Right. But the question is, when does the Ukraine? Well, first of all, we don't know who's going to be left on the Ukraine side actually. By then.
Exactly, and that may give Zelensky some reason why he wants to work with China. I know he doesn't really have a whole lot of power, but
on to the rest of the Chinese peace plan. Then.
Yes, so we got respecting the sovereignty of the countries, and we have abandoning the Cold War mentality. So then they're trying to set up trade and cooperation through the Belt and Road Initiative, which wants to go through Ukraine.
Yes.
And so this is about them saying we're going to invest in Ukraine to build it back up along with Russia, and we expect the West to do the same thing or allow it.
Okay. So the Chinese are basically saying we're the ones who are going to pay for the rebuilding, of Ukraine.
That we should have, if we want to invest. I don't think they'll ever use it should. I think it'll be, here's your investment opportunity. If you don't want to take it, then you won't get any of the rewards from it.
Yes.
That's how all of China does their negotiations. It has nothing to do with force. It's forceful in a way.
An open hand.
Yeah.
Yep. And positive incentive.
Yep. Yeah. Always. Win-win.
And that's what they're going to do. And that's the second point.
Say it again.
Is that the second point in the peace plan?
Yes, that's the second point. Third point is ceasing hostilities, which of course to me means we need to go back to the nuclear arms agreements. We need to go back to more, mines. We need to talk about tear gas. We need to talk about chemical weapons. We need to talk about all those things. I think that's what they're talking about, is getting to the point where we're no longer creating the means for hostilities without tracking who owns them, who has them, and why, and giving reasons. The next one would be, of course, to resume peace talks. after we've come to the decision that we're going to make sure that we aren't going to try and kill each other and the whole world with it, we need to talk about how each country is sovereign. Each country has some sort of advantage to rebuild and to work with its people. And we need to talk about real peace, because treaties aren't real peace. Treaties are just about holding hostility so that you can talk. And, it's not about, and I like the term here, because when they say resuming peace talks, they don't mean like World War I reparations. They don't mean, even like United States occupy and then, take over economies. They mean, this is your land. How can we work together with your rules the way your public and your people want? That's the only piece that I can think of that they would mean. Resolving the humanitarian crisis, which I think a lot of people in the United States don't understand. They think that they're the ones that are the humanitarians, right?
Yeah.
And so when they put this thing, you get a lot of scoffing, like, oh, China, how they could talk about it, the Uyghurs, and that's all we hear, right?
Yeah.
Yet if we list all the things compared to their things, there's, you could make a case that China may be a little bit better, but even if you just want to make things even, just say, hey, we've done a lot of bad things, they've done a lot of bad things, maybe now is the time to discuss what humanitarian, what being a human means, right? That this is actually almost a call to, they used to be in the past, it would be a call to some sort of kumbaya moment, right? It means that we have to find our humanity in each other. So I look at it as like trading people, more or less. We, where Americans come there to help development, Americans come to Africa to help development, Chinese come to Africa. There has to be a cross education program we have to end the humanitarian crisis by recognizing humanity in every person.
We also have to recognize, though, the extent of the humanitarian crisis.
Yeah.
It's quite possible that half the population of Ukraine has already left.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
20 million people. What happens to them?
Well, what if their land's not capable of sustaining them? I mean, if there's enough uranium, tips that are left there, there could be large swaths of land that are pretty much poisoned.
Yeah. And that's one issue. And then another thing I was thinking of as far as humanitarian goes is making sure that people and sides and countries are there for humanitarian assistance, not for stealing resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, NGO
Yeah.
are evil. USAID, which pretty much runs all the NGOs, is an absolutely racist or colonial organization. It should be abolished completely. But yes, that and the humanitarian issues that we hold dear need to be expressed in a way that isn't authoritarian. Because we do that. We say that our way of thinking is the only way, and if you don't think that way, then you are the problem. That cannot happen anymore. And I know that's going to be part of our movement on the left. It's going to have an issue with that. And that's why I sometimes talk about those the purity laws that we like to set up. What we believe is important and what we believe should be a freedom other people don't right now, and they don't even understand why we talk about it, and it becomes a threat to their way of life, even though we look at it as something that's totally benign, doesn't make any sense why you care, but they do, because they don't have the same 40 or 50 years that we've taken to get to the point that we're at with these decisions, and so I do think that when I bring up humanitarian crisis, humanitarian thing, I think that's a growth where once we recognize the humanity in all of us, we can recognize that better.
Yeah.
Yes.
The next one is protecting civilians and POWs. And this may sound like it's it's not that big a deal or whatever, but Guantanamo Bay held hundreds of innocent people for
holding.
And it's still holding. At least most of them have some form of, but not worth what they're in there for. That it is, we have thousands, and I'm not joking, thousands of black sites where people are being held. Not just our country, other countries are doing that as well. And those are the things that need to be hunted out, like we're hunting those, people, war criminals. We really need to hunt these people down and get these people freed. This also includes people being held, for trafficking, because there has been a lot of anyway, I'm getting too far into it, but protecting civilians and POWs, keeping nuclear power plants safe. And this is another one that is important, because there's no solution for our environment without nuclear. I don't like saying that. I wish it was something different, but the fourth generation nuclear power plants produce a very small amount of nuclear waste at this point. And we don't have much choice if we're going to actually remove the carbon, plant the trees that are required to remove the part, but still continue on with the energy requirements that we have. Solar is gonna reach that point, but we don't have the battery power, and following these nuclear sites instead of retrofitting them to be safer is leaving people in the dark on purpose.
Yeah.
So there's that. Reducing strategic risk, which is very important for China, because they're dealing with the Belt and Road Initiative, where they're sending engineers out. And those engineers they don't send them with weapons. They don't send them with military. They're not there for that capacity. They're there to teach engineering and build roads. And so people, terrorists come in who are, paid to do those work or that kind of thing. We need to have a universally recognized security system that isn't run by, NGOs or one country or NATO or any of these groups to protect these people while they're doing what I think is the most important job on the planet, which is connecting us all safely. Because they're talking about pirates lately that have been taking ships in the Indian Ocean that are just killing people. They're not taking anything. They're just wiping out the ship. And they're filled with engineers and people that are there to go to Africa. And, there's plenty of signs that they're doing that with a, quote unquote, military organization behind them. We can kind of guess who that might be.
Yes, we can kind of guess.
Next one is facilitating grain exports, which, I'm going to have to say this out loud, that Russia has already offered to give Africa all the wheat and grain it needs for free if people don't stop. He goes through these markets so that other companies, make money. And if they're not going to be safe and he has to send his troops, he's already outlined that he's just going to give Africa the wheat that they require, because I think there is a definite concerted effort now from both Russia and China that Africa will be a dominant world leader, that they expect them to be part of the multipolar just as strong as Russia or China is. And they want to do it within, I think you said 20 years, 25 years, which is something that would have happened if we didn't wipe out Libya. Next one I have is, let's see where we got it here. stopping unilateral sanctions.
I like that one.
Yeah, I like that one too. I love that.
Yeah. They say that in the last 10 years, United States sanctions may have killed or displaced hundreds of millions of people. So it not only killed them, but they left because they didn't have any way of making out a living in the area that they're in, or it became warlord. I mean, Africa is filled with these pockets because we sanction, these countries.
The unilateral sanctions are also violations of international law.
Yeah, they're war crime.
Yeah. And look at all the sanctions we have on South and Central America, too. And yet we wonder why so many people are trying to flee to America for asylum.
Yeah,
And
So wonder
Biden's expanding
hate us.
Title 42. Yeah.
yep. Yeah, and we still don't recognize that immigration as being good for the United States, which is another absolute brain fart of racism that just shoots ourselves in the foot over and over again.
Yes.
They prioritize European over anybody else.
Yep. Yeah, that and how many people have I met over my lifetime that had PhD degrees from different countries, and they were working as janitors or fast food in the United States because they couldn't get jobs. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting that because University of Mexico is one of the a biology worldwide magnet school. It's an incredibly good school. And, there was a virologist that I worked with at Nike for a little while that was, it had a good job, but she was, she was, this PhD and that she couldn't get a job in any biology, even doing cleanup work. So she ended up doing data research for a retail company. We are leaving our resources.
And one thing I want to bring up too, because of my relation to the university here, we have a lot of foreign students that come in. Their countries pay double the tuition. Whereas they could go to school in Germany.
Yeah, for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's insane.
It is insane.
Yes,
and
probably get a better education in Germany too.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
But our school is also the one that's working on the nuclear, updating the nuclear.
I just read it that they had a recent breakthrough that lowered the amount of fission waste in half again.
Oh, ours is working on nuclear weaponry.
Oh, well, this is the other side of it. So it's now down to a very heavy thimble size every decade. So we're again, because of we build this hatred up, and then we have a hard time updating our science and getting it out there. We just are consistently see Fukushima and think that that's nuclear, or 3 Mile Island, or all these different things, all these disasters, and we don't look into how much work
to change.
Yeah. And that we are getting close to fusion, but I don't think we're going to be any kind of there before. I think we'll get to the battery storage before we get to commercial available fusion for solar. But anyway, that's the unilateral sanctions is a big deal, and I think it put it back into Ukraine's sense that this is the part that China's saying, yeah, we'll agree because Russia's, this far ahead. Russia's going to say, well, we need to get rid of all sanctions on us and China. And I think that line itself could actually forestall any kind of actual World War III, because that's as far as China is concerned. China will try and contain everything, but if you try and stop China's economic adoption, and worldwide status to bring stability, they're going to view that as the same thing as using nuclear bombs on their country. It's because they want and desire nothing but stability. So I think that may be something that is going to be hard for the United States to give up, but they have to recognize that it's not working anymore anyway.
I don't know whether we're going to recognize that or not. It's a very big cognitive jump for us to understand the difference in perspective.
Yeah.
Way we've built, our walls. But isn't it so that the overwhelming nature of the Russian victory, in Ukraine, is going to be such that the peace will be on Russian terms?
I think China's going to, if they broker the deal, they need to make as much of a concession to that, so that, because I think the West has to somehow come out of this being able to fool their population into being an even victor or an even Stevens thing, right? They're not going to get away with a victory, but they have to be seen as like not getting beaten and run with their tail between their legs. That's more dangerous. It's a much more dangerous United States that has to kowtow back away from the United States with their tail between their legs.
Yes, I understand that. And I think they should do as much as they can to accommodate those kinds of outlooks and feelings. On the other hand, there comes a point where you just cannot allow that to distort the whole thing.
Oh, I totally agree.
Constructive aspects of the Belt and Road Initiative and the new security framework that the Russians and Chinese are trying to introduce cannot themselves be compromised. So the issue becomes, within that framework, what can be offered to the collective West?
Yeah. And I do suspect that it's not going to be an offer. I think it's going to be, well, this is the best we're going to give you. It's still okay. You're still okay until Europe decides that they are much more prosperous with China, which will in turn, personally, I think, end neoliberalism in the United States simultaneously. We will see a political upheaval at that point. I'm not saying it's necessarily good political upheaval. I'm just saying that I don't think that the oligarchy will be so interested in the democratic style of plutocracy any longer. And I do think that really we're probably already at that point. We just don't realize it.
I think we are.
I think that the mere fact that, as we saw our, chief up there today, acting like an adult, unfeeling, and completely devoid of understanding of the position he's in, is being in power still is, you guys can, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, remember when Ronald Reagan started to show some signs that he may have some issues. That only happened in the second half of his final term.
Yes.
If that had happened in the first half, there is no way he would have won a second term, and that's even with going up against Dukakis. I honestly don't, or I honestly think that the Bush would have probably, because there was even talk. I mean, I know we're getting off base, but I'm gonna rein in my ADHD a little bit, but
to another point though. Okay, when the negotiations are taking place, I assume the Russians and Chinese are going to try to set up a major peace conference with lots of interests, and a lot of the Europeans involved.
Mm-hmm.
And the security framework they offer will be attractive.
Yeah, it will be.
It'll be attractive to the East Europeans, and it's going to be attractive to some of the West Europeans also.
Yeah, France and Spain specifically.
France and Spain and Germany.
Germany, yes, the people will. I don't believe that their leadership, it's EU and Germany are the same. They're lockstep. I think France, because France is going to have to deal with their people. They don't have a choice anymore, and this is going to look awfully good. Whatever China offers to them, I think, is going to look awfully good to the French.
The people are very restive in Germany, also, though.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I just feel like because the EU is so wrapped up in the identity of Germany, that there's the two fall together is what I'm saying. And I'm not so sure that the security state of Europe will allow that to happen from uprisings, from German protests, and even a election. Because I saw Italy EU came in and made sure that they got the right person in Italy, even though we all thought, oh, maybe, she was completely lockstep with the EU. It was similar to what I would consider like when Obama got in office, where we all thought that he was hope and change, and really had made backdoor deals and was already well in the neoliberal party at that point. We just didn't see it, right?
Okay. How far into the peace plan are we now?
Oh, we're almost there. See, we got next, stop unilateral sanctions. Next is keeping industrial and supply chains stable. And they pulled this out specifically, and that's because of the route of the Belt Road that they want to take right through Ukraine. And if that gets passed, if they say, that you have to, allow us that area in between, they'll probably use the edge of the DMZ zone to put their rail and their road right through Ukraine, which will open up Europe to trade directly with China. And so there will be, that's why I say that France will be exceedingly happy about and that will end the EU, and that will end Germany at the same time. There's a few things in here that are sneaky, good for
that will end the collective West.
Yeah, that will end the collective West. Europe will no longer be in the United States' pocket, and neoliberalism and neoconservatism will turn into probably, or attempt to turn into, a authoritarian oligarchy, overt authoritarian oligarchy. That's my unfortunate. I hope not, but that's how I see this going. And the reason why I see that is also because of Mexico. AMLO has been quite clear, love him, but Mexico is saying, I got all these resources. I should be a rich country. In some respects, I should be at least more rich than California, and I'm not. And that's done. So they are they're stepping forward in the world, and I think that lights a fuse. It goes all the way through South America and comes up all the way through right to the doorstep. It's pretty much the same thing as NATO putting bases along the border of Ukraine into an capitalist oligarch. That's what it does. And so I do see that. But anyway, we're almost done. I just wanted to say that the supply chain and the ending of unilateral sanctions, those are both things that are going to, end the collective West. The last one on here is promoting post-conflict reconstruction. And that is to say that all parties involved are going to be made to, just like we do with NATO now, put money into the kitty, or you don't, or you're considered, or they won't consider it. I think that, I talk about them trying to make it a win-win for the United States, and I think they will try and make it a win-win for the United States when they actually get to the actual nitty-gritty of the treaty. But I think it's going to be one of those things like the treaty has to lead to these final four things, and we have to discuss the framework that leads to that, because this is a comprehensive plan for peace. It's not a plan for a treaty. It's not a plan for a ceasefire. It's the end of U.S. hegemony and a rise of not just multipolar, but multi-sovereignty protection for people.
Okay, so looking at it then from the standpoint of our leaders,
Mm-hmm.
what do they get out of it? In other words, they come to terms with the fact that they're no longer the hegemons.
Mm.
What do they get in return for not being the hegemons any longer?
Yeah, I don't know as far as what China is going to offer the United States that's going to make any difference. But like we talked earlier, I do think they're going to make it really hard on the European countries not to accept a economic alliance with Russia and create that whole, because they're on the same continent, really. There's no, we like to pretend that Europe is its own continent. It is one big continent, and
it's Eurasia.
It's Eurasia, and I think that, I think that UK is going to have to make a massive decision, and I think when the UK finally decides that it is more European at that point than it is American, that's when the final king will have been dethroned. Because that's, to me, telling when you think about it. The reason why they even still have a monarchy, the reason why they still have a king, queen, or whatever, is this old bastion of imperialist bent that they are continually, trying to, symbolically or not, maintain inside of a monarchy. Looking at some of the laws that the monarch can actually still influence in the UK, it is like, if Parliament was overthrown, they would be back to a monarchy, and it'd be like that. And that's crazy to think that they maintain that for this long.
So Matt, I think so far, this discussion of the peace plan has been really fascinating and opens up all kinds of new mind ways, okay, if you will, that we can think about in trying to figure out what the likely changes, okay, are going to be. But I'd like to table that discussion until next week. And I did want to take a few minutes. Okay, I'm not sure it's the best thing to do right now, but okay, it's hard for me to resist temptation since you're here, Brandy and Dee, okay, are also all here, and we all have a little background, okay, in MMT. Uh, the reserve currency issue is starting to surface as people recognize, the United States is no longer going to be the hegemon, and one of the reasons is that many, many nations are now going to transact in their own currencies, or perhaps in rubles, okay, or in yuan,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
They already are.
right, okay, or in rupees. So, as of now, it's still the case that something like 83% of the world's trade transactions are settled, okay, in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what I want to discuss is what happens if over the next 10 years that falls to 40%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, which would be a lot. I don't know if it can quite fall that much, but it will definitely fall. I I think that we have a worse issue than that as far as from my MMT mind, because the bonds that we no longer really need, that we are pretty much seeing our government and our economy fall because of right now, because we're raising rates. That means that the bonds are worth less. That means that they have a solvency issue at banks. It doesn't mean that the banks are all going to fail. It just means that there's a lot. They're going to have to do QE and several other things to try and back up the banks again. That will, of course, force everybody to use their savings as they continue to raise rates. But going back, I think it's harder for the United States to deal with the fact that OPEC no longer values oil in dollars. And the reason why I say that is because inflation is what's going to kill the United States economy, not bank failures this time, not higher interest rates. We are going to have a pocket.
You're suggesting that because of the decline in transactions that are settled, okay, in dollars,
that have to be kept as bonds at the Treasury in order to pay for energy, and because that's the only way they were able to get it, because OPEC would only accept dollars for their oil, which they do not, and they are making deals with every BRICS country and even countries that are not in the BRICS. That shrinkage of the amount of treasuries being backed up that gives us power in the energy market is going to cause our energy prices to go up.
I don't think that a lot of people realize, with Egypt and Saudi Arabia joining China and Russia and all them and BRICS, how much that encircles that energy market. And even though we have ability for like oil and natural gas here, it's not that beneficial for us.
Well, and we're selling it off. We're selling our reserves. And then when we stop selling our reserves, that means the EU has more incentive to leave and end this crisis in Ukraine, causing more of a leadership issue in our own country. And notice that Trump is using all this rhetoric now about how he would end the war and all this kind of stuff. Yet he was an extreme proponent of war in Ukraine. There was no doubt that he wanted this to happen. So now you have a leading candidate start to push towards ending the Ukraine war in order to end the sanctions, specifically to restore business. That's now a shift where the oligarchy is attempting to re-legitimize its power through, and if it does it through this type of oligarchy, this faction, because I know that there are now factions of oligarchs. That this faction is into the authoritarian line, that created the CIA, the skull and bones, the old school, list. That's Trump's dividing, line, instead of the new money, which is in the tech.
Focus and
Sorry.
Frame perhaps the question, okay, a little bit. Okay, just look at the bare fact that only 40% of the world's transactions may be settled in dollars, right? Let's say 10 years from now.
Yeah, that would be amazing, but yeah.
Okay. I have the disposition to say, but so what? We are going to settle our transactions, in dollars. People want to trade with us. We have our products, and we have our materials also.
Yeah, we do.
And we're still an extremely strong economy. And if we refocus on our economy and making it stronger, I'm having trouble seeing why there would be any reason for inflation here in the United States. We are, since we took the terrible steps, of increasing oil drilling and all this stuff, we ourselves are pretty well self-sufficient when it comes to fossil fuels.
Yes, and
our problem
is political.
Well, of course, we all know that our problem is always based politically, but just from the standpoint of economics and from the standpoint of what we have to transition to, the fossil fuels are not that important to us. What's important is transitioning to new energy sources, to cleaner energy sources. I mean, that's our national problem.
But that's why I say it's political. When I say that the evaluation of dollars and gas and oil as being the source of our inflation, that is purely political. It isn't a natural thing. None of this is all that natural. If we were to do things that made sense to the people, we wouldn't be the stalemate would be not happening in Congress. We wouldn't be in Ukraine.
If we start to do things that make sense for the people, there's no reason for disinflation.
No, there's none. There's none right now. There was none before Ukraine. There was, no. And
so some people have been saying that if the BRICS nations go forward and transactions, lots and lots of transactions are done in other currencies, then there's going to be a flood of dollars that's going to be coming back to our shores. And that's going to inflate everything. We have people saying that. And
because they
challenge.
Yes, because they think that money volume is what is and creates inflation, right? We know that money volume is a symptom of inflation, not a cause, and so it's really hard.
We also
to explain
know that there have to be channels for this money to get back here, get into our economic system, and goose demand up to cause inflation. and I'm looking for those channels. I'm
Well,
seeing people saying that there's going to be a flood of money that's going to hit our shores. How does that hit our shores?
it doesn't. That money can hit our shores, and it's only good for things that are able to buy in U.S. dollars. So once they get rid of those bonds that they don't have, either buy American oil with them. It doesn't matter because they're going right back into the United States. It isn't. They just think that all that dollars and all that money that's going to come back to us into our general, people and corporations and everything else is going to cause inflation because there's a devaluation of every dollar when there's $1 created. It's gold standard thinking, and
Right.
it's demonstrably not true. We have large countries that,
And from an MMT point of view,
yeah,
it's not a necessary outcome.
no, we should do like Japan did and pay off all our bonds right now. Just poof, goodbye. We're done. They're in now accounts sitting in the Fed, not at interest anymore, just a regular checking account. Take it as you will.
All right, and Matt, I think you know how I feel about that.
Yeah, yeah, and then the $1 trillion coin.
Not the $1 trillion coin.
Well, or the
Yeah,
over.
I'm a proponent of the $1 trillion coin for a very long time.
Yes, you have over.
The $100 trillion coin.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I don't talk $1 trillion coins.
no, we need more than that. You're right. But that's all we need, right? That's just to make the people realize that debt is not an issue. It can't be an issue. Every time the Bank of Japan paid off its a loan, that was their best. They'd always have a really good year economically. They actually did it to stimulate the economy there. They spent 240% of GDP in deficit spending for 46 years, with less than 1% growth or 1% inflation.
Yes.
I know that the United States did that to try and they thought to calm their economy down because they were becoming rivals of the United States, and that's why they allowed the Japanese to run their economy that way. But it's just proof that monetarism is a disease. It's not a economic system.
Yes.
But like you said, I'm not worried about the money coming back. I'm worried about the political environment allowing for the inflation of both energy costs and of loan costs by raising interest rates. Those are the things that they're attempting to put people out of work, which it hasn't put anybody out of work yet. So they're going to go about, touting this bank failure. They're trying to bring about the psychological reasons for a recession, and not because they can't get to the actual economic reasons for a recession.
Do we have any other comments?
I have a question. So something I saw pop up today in the news, they had a vote on the UN for an investigation into Nord Stream, and it failed.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, but I just wondered, what are your thoughts? Do you think that they will ever really put forth an effort?
UN is a arm of the U.S. control over the rule making system of the world. They aren't a. There was a time when the UN was far more fair and not quite as much in the pocket. They were still. But
so here's where the issue of change is due to to a Russian victory, okay, in Ukraine, come in. If we see that victory
Hmm.
next 2 or 3 months, what impact will it have on Ukraine? I'm sorry, on the UN, okay, itself. In other words,
Yeah.
how long
Either through
those
victory or
nations
peace deal.
Hmm.
don't particularly care for us
Hmm.
and who chafe under the leadership of the United States, how long are they going to continue to line up with the United States when it's obvious we don't have the military capability for the defense of Europe? There's no more need for the defense of Europe because of the new security framework.
Oh, and they've proven that we can't produce enough to actually keep up with them anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So, given all this, will someday, 6 months from now or 8 months from now, when somebody reintroduces the idea of doing a Nord Stream investigation, will these other nations just say to themselves, well, hell, what can the United States do to us? Why not have
Long,
an investigation?
it's just veto power. It's just that they're on the UN Council and they have veto power.
It's the veto
Yeah.
power in the Security Council, but there's no veto power in the General Assembly.
Well, and then they would probably have to discuss a shadow UN because at that point, and if you really want to, I mean, really for the last 20 years, the U.S. has run a shadow UN. Kofi Annan is considered what we did in Iraq as a war crime. He was quite upfront with that. So they pulled the United States.
Crime?
Yeah, but that's so. The second that Iraq occurred is when the UN had a shadow U.S.-led UN, and it started in the early '90s, but it was really completed when we were able to, without any incident whatsoever, and plenty of coalition to go in and wipe out who was the Saddam, who was really only holding on to power by pure, nobody wanted change. Not that he was, as after they went in, found out it wasn't a threat at all. And Iran was probably a better counter to Saddam than anything we could have done to him at that point. Of course, not involved with 9/11, and then go off and wipe out a country in Afghanistan that was harboring a criminal. I don't know if you understand how disgusting that is, that you wipe out an entire country to get one person and then 20 years later pay off that same group to fight for you in Syria. And those are the kind of things that make you just, they had a separate UN. They shadowed it over so they could do whatever they wanted to make whatever rules they wanted.
Yes, but again, we see that this group is losing power.
It has to, yeah, and it was always going to, right? I always had that scene. The gun gets really heavy the older you get. It's just false. Eventually, you can't hold the gun to somebody's head for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. It just doesn't work.
Yes.
Especially when you have over 100 million people, and you're just not going to be able to keep it together. So it was a failed idea, and oligarchy just considers its money so powerful that it's shown that their hubris is causing its people to be under threat of military attack if they don't back down eventually. Because I don't think China's going to fool with us at all. I think if we went into Taiwan, they would automatically go after something that was precious to us to either not militarily, economically, to show that it was done. They would, at that point, we would feel the same Chinese sanctions. Right away.
If we go after Taiwan, you're talking about in a military sense?
Yeah, like what they brag about, which is impossible. But yes, go off and blockade Taiwan and give them plenty of weapons and all that kind of stuff. Even though today, or it was today or yesterday, their new leader went over to China and are now discussing, close ties with the Chinese mainland, which is just cutting out, so they're going to have to coup them, right?
I think we're not going to be able to do anything there.
No. Well, and if
We
that
can't.
falls, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we don't have weapons to get them.
No, we don't.
They've been taken from the states, from the National Guards.
Yeah, it's we're ridiculous. And really, that regime that's in Taiwan that's in power right now is growing in power. It's actually Japanese backed. So when you think of the reunification happening and you see Japan's rhetoric, in the United States' favor, realize that turns on a dime the second China says anything about sanctions towards Japan or anything, because Japan is absolutely in the cat seat right now. They are sitting there in the best part because we deal with Japan, China deals with Japan. So the second any kind of actual sanctions, that Japan is going to ship us everything we wanted from Japan at quadruple, 100 times the price that we have to pay for it right now. Because we won't stop. We will still demand all those things from China. Because the oligarchy will lose too much money ramping up production in the United States in order to match demand here. They will no longer be able to control our government.
Okay, so I agree.
That's why they're doing it.
I think this discussion has been a wonderful one.
Good.
And I would like to continue it next week.
Sounds good.
How do you feel about that, Brandy?
I like that idea. I think Tuesday nights are good for us.
Okay, Dee?
Yes, I'm in. I really enjoy these discussions,
Mm-hmm.
especially since we're hearing all this all week long. It's nice to have a group together
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
to discuss it.
Yeah, it's cathartic because you can't do anything about it but talk about it.
Yep. Exactly.
And we don't have to argue with each other about baseline facts.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful that we don't have to do about baseline facts? Yeah, that's
Ruins everything.
One of the things I was going to say earlier, as far as neoliberalism ending in the U.S., when that actually does happen,
When
I'm
does
wondering, huh?
No, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just wondering how people are going to take it.
Well,
Like emotionally, how they're going to handle it. If they're going to break down because everything that they have built their entire belief system on is wrong. And just
I don't think that
a psychology nerd in me wants to.
It's awesome discussion.
Yeah, because I've seen it here locally, like a year ago when all this broke out, and we were showing pictures and articles and everything else, and we explained that the sanctions hurt the people. The argument we got back from liberals were, no, the government says it's only going after the rich, and that's not true. That's all Russian propaganda. And it's like, when the people actually realize that they've been so brainwashed and everything they believe in is untrue, how are they going to mentally handle that?
How do people feel about, how do we feel? Not people, but we. How do we feel about taking this one question and making it the subject of a discussion on
in
Thursday,
the future?
This coming Thursday, okay, at 9:00.
I could do it.
I can try. I think I should be able to.
Okay, Dee?
Yes, I'm in.
Okay, so the four of us are in for Thursday because I think this is a great topic
It is a great topic.
But
Long
Mhm.
topic,
and
but a great
Yeah.
topic.
it's a long topic. It's a great topic. It's a hugely significant topic. Gets a lot into MMT.
Yep.
Okay, and how we can maybe ease the problem that you're talking about, Brandy,
Mm-hmm.
with the MMT paradigm. Uh, so it seems to me that's a fascinating thing to discuss.
I agree.
Okay, so let's
Perfect.
do the Thursday program on that.
Okay.
And I'm keeping my regular design for Wednesdays and Fridays with respect to dump the corruption.
Yeah.
In other words, going over candidates and how they set up against the litmus test. But
Yeah.
I'll be discussing now Democrats, in other words, not CPC people, but regular Democrats,
Hmm.
and also be starting to talk about the Republicans, okay, as well, and how they set up. Okay,
Okay.
so that's what I plan. So far, we haven't done anything in terms of considering comments.
I just want to bring up one more thing. Tomorrow night I will not be available for anything. We've got a planning meeting with those of us who are trying to expand the Green Party right now. So,
That sounds wonderful. I mean, having such a meeting
yeah.
about how to expand the Green Party sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So, uh, are there any real significant questions we've gotten here?
We've gotten some pretty good ones. I think it was Steve asked earlier. I seen about. I'm trying to find it. The biolabs in Ukraine.
Oh, yes, I wondered
Hmm.
about them myself. Uh, have the Russians captured any of the biolabs yet?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep, they've gotten documentation out of them
Hmm.
as
Yeah.
well.
They can't get that added into the UN either. They've
Yeah.
tried. There's going to be a lot of this stuff. That's one of the things I think will go along to our neoliberal discussion, because that's part of the veil that's going to come across. Um, those kind of atrocities are going to come out.
Yeah.
There's a question came from Evelina Pont. Hi, Evelina. Nice to see you again. Poland is complaining they can't compete against cheap Ukrainian grain. Wondering what else Poland exports. Do they have industry there? Yeah.
Yeah.
I looked. I thought they had quite a bit of industry in Poland.
Yeah, they have automobile industry. A lot of German cars are made in Poland. They are a rich. They should be a rich industrial country.
Yeah. And they make corduroy jackets. I used to have one.
Well, and we make fun of them. There's no reason to. It's a stupid
Yeah.
farce. But some of it's beautiful. It's actually a beautiful part of the world.
My husband's grandfather was an immigrant from Poland. My husband's 100% Polish.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
Yeah,
Even
that's
they have a weapons industry, don't they? Yes.
yes. Yeah, that's most of Europe's weapons are made or a lot of them are made in Poland. Artillery, especially.
And Sherry says this is such a good discussion. Thank you, Matthew Waldie.
Oh, thanks, Sherry. How you doing?
Hi, Sherry. How you doing?
we should invite Sherry on
Oh yeah,
Thursday
definitely.
as well with us with the MMT knowledge and
Okay, yeah, I think we should certainly invite Sherry. Okay, if you're available. By the way, if you're available, okay, at 9 o'clock on Thursday, I think you'd be great for that discussion too. But
Mhm.
certainly for next Tuesday's discussion, you'd be terrific as well. We have a little group, but actually, the title of it, okay, is "Around the World with Brandy and Dee." It comes off their show, but we use that okay, as a Facebook group where we do, throw around ideas about the shows.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
we
both
can add you both
for
in.
Matt and for Sherry, it would be wonderful to add you both to that group. Okay, and
Great.
you would always be aware, okay, of what we're having on a particular night, and you'd always be free to join because we send the StreamYard links there.
Sounds good.
Okay, and you both would be welcome for any of our discussions. Okay, at any time. I think I speak for the rest of us in saying that, right, folks?
Definitely, we respect both of them. They both are brilliant people.
Okay. Uh,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It's good to get these out.
Yeah, it is. It is a good, which we do different. We do a lot on Palestine
Yes.
and other places around the world that things are going on. I've got a show topic coming up that I'm going to mention in the group probably tomorrow or later on tonight as well. But yeah, anytime. And if you have anything, we're also trying to do some more interviews with activists. Like we got to interview Jose Vega. We got to
I saw that.
interview.
It
Yeah.
was good. He's a good guy.
Yeah. He is a really good guy. And we got to interview Abel, who is from my county.
Cool.
And he's one I've learned a lot about Ukraine and Russia with from.
I love this very anarchist feel. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
so
We're
it's just like-
self-organizing.
Yeah. And it's
Very
like
cool.
whoever is in the group, anytime you want to join in, just say, hey, we're coming in.
Yeah, I'm
All
not
right.
ashamed. I
Yeah.
am a pacifist anarchist, and this is definitely appealing to me.
Yeah.
well, thank you, Matt.
Okay, you're added.
Thanks. Because that would be a nice topic too to talk about, ideological points of view that are a little more free thinking.
Yes.
Well, I think I'm the one of the further left of the group because I only spent 2 years dealing with the Dems. The rest of that time I was completely third party, independent, left leaning. I voted for Nader my first election, so other than maybe Madeline.
Oh, that's right. I'm really bad on politics, on that kind of electric politics.
Madeline is part of our group.
Yeah, Madeline's a part of our group.
And
too.
comes
she's
to
great.
the shows.
Yeah, we did a couple of shows last end of the summer with her. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
She's wonderful. I know she's just about done moving, so that'll be nice.
Yeah, I think once she gets settled in and gets comfortable, it'll be good.
Well, I had to do the same thing. I had to get comfortable in my brain.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, awesome.
Okay, so we've got a few more questions. Steve Wolfbrand said, Thomas, let's see what he said. People don't like Elon, but I dig him on most things.
He's an oligarch, but it's fine.
And most of he tries to call himself self-made, but most of his is inherited.
Self-made was a couple of $1 million.
Yeah. The rest of it was his dad. But yeah, it's oligarch.
Yeah. Anything about $650-700 million, you're starting to get into that oligarch mindset.
Well,
if you don't have anything else to do with your money but control people with it.
Also looking at where he's come from, like I consider, for being from Arkansas, I've actually met people from a lot of different places around the world, and from what went on in South Africa with the apartheid there. and his family being from South Africa, I think there's
Mhm.
still very much of that mindset
Mhm.
in him.
Yeah,
I think
I
so.
don't mean that. Yeah, I don't mean that he's he doesn't have. He can
Yeah.
side with oligarch. Oligarchy obviously is a very robust political system.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, a lot of people do well in an oligarchy that's run like ours is in a representative, style, which is what we are. We're a representative oligarchy, um, in my opinion, and in Stanford's opinion.
Yeah. My
So,
problem with him is the
In
apartheid.
Princeton's opinion too.
yeah. So, and that means that you get factions of oligarchy that push off of each other and keep things relatively stable. Because once you go beyond that point, oligarchy turns into authoritarianism, a harsh authoritarianism, very quickly.
Yeah, which is what we're starting to see now.
Yeah.
The police state is an obvious notion that we're on the downward cycle like that, because they're picking out demographics, and that's they pick out people who are poor, people of color, people of different, anything different that they can demonize. That's who they will suppress for as long as possible, and then they get closer and closer and closer. Like it's okay for people of color in the middle class. Oh, now it's no longer okay for people of color in the middle class. They just, as long as it keeps protecting, and cloistering the good ones in their camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what he does, by the way. That's what an oligarch does, and that's what buying Twitter did, and that's what buying WAPO did for the other oligarch.
Right, and then we have the Israelis, the IDF, the soldiers, that police training here in the United States,
Yeah.
and that's a huge scary thing, but that gets put to the side. Enough people don't realize that, or they try to suppress that information.
They all the time. That's an actual genocide that we're supporting, but we supported others, and we're so upset that we can't support it in Yemen anymore. And then the Mossad, we just got evidence that they were the 2016 release of the DNC emails that through Seth Rich. That's a really interesting, still conspiracy. I'm not going to say it's for sure, but that does seem to be a custody. You can see the information passing.
Okay, so on that note, I think I would like to say goodnight with just one more proviso. Next week, when we start off, I'd like to go back to the peace plan.
Yes.
Because we barely scratched the surface of that. And
I will bring it up. I'll bring it up in a nice little graphic you can grab and throw up there so people can read it too.
Okay.
Because I read it verbatim.
Okay.
The simpler, the better.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
And good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care, everybody. Oh, no. Thank you for the conversation. I need it.
Therapy,
Take care, everybody.
Okay. Oh, by the way, we'll see everybody Thursday.
Oh, yep. Yep.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
So that's it.